till now we have discussed many important issues related to management of inventory systems, and as you might have noticed that while you try to have a management systems for say the inventory control, so you also must consider the production control aspects and many other the important the issues, and these issues we have already discussed from several perspectives, like say from the perspectives of online real-time control, from the perspectives of say theory of constraints, from the perspectives of say the material substitutions through value engineering. So all these topics we have say the covered. Now during this week, this is the last week, the 12th week of this particular course. Now we are referring to an important topic, that is logistics and supply chain management. Now throughout the say the worldwide, because of many reasons, the logistics and supply chain management has assumed the critical importance, and the entire say the framework of say the inventory and say the production control the systems in any organization, it is said that it is essentially a part of the logistics and the supply chain management, which is basically you can say is a bigger system, and within the system, within the supply chain management systems, so you have been working. So what we have thought of, that we must conclude our say the lecture sessions with this with discussing this important topic called logistics and supply chain management. And there are the several issues involved. There are several topics included in supply chain management, and what you will find that for the supply chain management systems to be working, meeting its specific objectives, you must have sufficient control on your inventory systems as well as your the production systems. So so in the process of say highlighting all the important issues of supply chain management, you will come to know that to what extent the inventory and say the production control say the facilitates say the achievement of objectives of logistics and supply chain management. Now there are the 5 lecture topics I have selected, and all the issues, all the important issues, though it is a very vast topic, supply chain management, you will come to know that there are so many issues you need to consider, but still what I have thought of that out of the many relevant issues, a few important, most important issues we need to discuss, particularly the topics which are highly relevant to understand the usability or usefulness of say inventory and production control. So there will be 5 lecture sessions, and before I take up, or before I start discussing these important topics, let me tell you the top lecture-wise the topics I intend to cover. In the first lecture session, the basic concepts and issues which we must be dealing with in logistics and supply chain management. We'll be highlighting all these concepts and issues. The problems in the design of supply chain network. So we will come to know what is the supply chain network, and once you present your supply chain network, and then what are the problems you need to address, how these problems are to be formulated, and what are the decision variables and in each problem. So all these details we will try to highlight. Importance of supply chain management in present industrial context. This point I already have mentioned, that in the present industrial context, the supply chain management issues you must consider. And evolution and growth of supply chain management. Supply chain management is not a new concept, but over the years what has happened, it has gone through several phases. As the industrial situations are changing, so also the supply chain management related issues. Okay, the new kinds of issues you need to address under supply chain management. So all these details we'll discuss during the first lecture session. Second lecture sessions we'll discuss in detail the supply chain network. We'll continue the discussions on supply chain network, along with the major issues in supply chain management during third lecture session, as well as during fourth lecture sessions. So you also must know that what are the major issues in supply chain management and how all these issues are relevant, and if you need to consider all these issues, what sort of approaches or what sort of tools and techniques you need to use. And we'll conclude these lecture sessions with the last lecture sessions we will cover the supply chain performance measurement and evaluation methodology. This is very important. So there could be many types of measurement systems, measurement and evaluation systems for supply chain performance. So here we are going to discuss a comprehensive supply chain performance measurement and evaluation methodology. So what are the steps involved in this methodology? What are the data to be collected, and how do you identify the performance criteria? So what are the criteria, performance criteria we will select for different members of the supply chain? So all these details we are going to discuss. And what is our expectation is, with this knowledge in supply chain management issues, you will be able to design your inventory control systems in a better manner. That means you will come to know to what extent your present inventory control system is effective, and for improving the effectiveness of your inventory control systems, what are the alternate the control systems you may propose in a given situation. So during these lecture sessions we'll discuss the basic concept and the issues, problem in the design of the supply chain network, importance of supply chain management in present industrial context in specific terms we'll mention, and then evolution and growth of supply chain management. So these the 4 subtopics we're going to discuss now. Now the concept of logistics and supply chain management is introduced to address the problem of integration of organizational functions. As you might have noticed that there are different organizational functions you must be dealing with. This point say we have already mentioned, like say there are different functions like say the marketing and market research, then specifications engineering or the product development, then you deal with the procurement, then you deal with say the process planning and control, then you have the production, then you have the inspection and final examination, so and then sales and distributions. So and there are many others like the technical services, then the storage, the storing and say the packing and storing, sales and distributions, technical services, okay, and even disposal after use. So these are the specific the organizational functions, and what you need to do. That means you need to integrate all these functions, and you will find that there is the information flow, there is the material flow so between all these functions, and to what extent you are able to make this flow as smooth as possible. Now these organizational functions range from ordering and receipt of raw materials, this is a very vital function, and other parts and components through the manufacturing process, to the distribution and delivery of products or the end items to the customers. Okay, so this is the entire process. That means you have the inbound logistics, then you have a factory systems or say production and manufacturing systems, and then you have the outbound logistics. That means from say the suppliers to the customers. Okay. Now this is a dynamic system. So there will be flow of materials in different forms, and what you need to do, that means when you run a factory systems, to what extent you can exert control, okay, to meet your to achieve your objective of improved financial performance. To what extent you control the activities of or the tasks or the related to the flow of materials from the suppliers, as well as the flow of materials or the say in different forms to the customers. Okay, so that is your responsibility. Integration, so integration is a must. So integration of these functions should be done in such a way that it results in, now this point you just note it down, that means this integration, we always talk about the integration, but integration can be done in several ways, okay, but here in this case when you talk about supply chain management, this integration should lead to achievement of high quality in products and customer services, and the second important objective is it must result in reduction in inventory cost. Now these are the two the critical problems always you face. So there are several instances where the companies or the organizations have been successful in achieving these two objectives. Okay. Now supply chain management is found to have a huge potential competitive impact. That means if you find that your product is competitive and your market share is growing, the profitability is also increasing. There could be many reasons, and one of the most the important reasons always you'll find that is your supply chain management system is very efficient and effective. So it is so if your supply chain management is proper, appropriate, then it will have a positive impact on your say the financial performance. It was originally introduced to describe a new integrated logistics management approach across different business functions. Okay, so that means, as I have already pointed out, that the supply chain management is not a new concept. In the earlier times, what we used to have, that means we used to, for supply chain management, we used to concentrate on managing different business functions. Is it okay? Like purchasing, like manufacturing, distribution, sales. These are the typical the business functions we'll be dealing with. Later on, SCM, or as of now, the SCM concerns with a number of issues, factors and activities of an organization. Okay, so it is not only concentrating on a few, say, business functions. So it deals with a large number of issues, factors and activities. So some of these issues or the factors or the activities I have named, like the demand forecasting. So this you must look into. Procurement function. Okay, as we have already discussed in detail, the purchasing management. Basically, it deals with the procurement function. Obviously, they will be dealing with the manufacturing system, the distribution, like say, we have already discussed the distribution requirements planning. Then the inventory part to be looked into. The transportation is a very important issue, and the customer service, the service level. We already know what is the service level. So ultimately, the entire supply chain management, that means your supply chain management should be such that you can achieve the desired the service level say the desired by the customers. So an integrated approach you can extend to customers and the suppliers. That means not only you are trying to integrate the activities which you carry out within your factory systems, but you also try to integrate the activities you carry out in respect of your suppliers as well as in respect of your customers. So like we refer to the CIM, Computer Integrated Manufacturing. So here the integration is done of the activities that you carry out within the factory systems. But then again, we go one step ahead. We say, why don't you go for computer integrated business? That means, why don't you include in your integration, okay, the activities you carry out constantly with your supplier, as well as the activities you carry out in respect of your customers all the time. So then we move from say from CIM to CIB, Computer Integrated Business, like what many Japanese organizations have done. So SCM tends to be used in a wider sense and encompasses several supply chain processes, not necessarily related to logistics. I started with logistics in 60s, but later on it encompasses many other supply chain processes. Now, what are the problems that you may come across in the design of, say, supply chain network? To quantify and optimize the trade-off between customer service levels and inventory investment required to support the service requirements. Now this is very important. That means one is the service level, and you need to have very high service level, and this service level with you have to say the maintain the desirable service level you have to maintain with minimum inventory investment. So and there could be many other the secondary objectives you may have, and all these objectives you need to satisfy simultaneously. So it has to be an integrated approach, and there must be a trade-off between for getting an optimized performance level. So the problem in SCM becomes challenging mainly due to dynamic nature of the supply chains. Is it okay? So, so the supply chain, the characteristics as well as the flow of materials, okay, been changing over time. So it's a dynamic system. So what are the main problems actually you may face? Like you need to consider, like the prolific product variety. Okay, so the product varieties are more. Then short product lifetime. Is it okay? So the product life cycle is becoming day by day, it is becoming shorter and shorter for many products. Frequent new product introductions. So this is one. Non-stationary customer demand. So this already we know that that means when you deal with already we have dealt with a problem called the problem under uncertainty, and so while we classify the inventory related problems, so it is even suppose the problem is problem under risk is you come across, but again the probability distribution may be known, probability distribution of demand may be known at this point in time, but in future maybe the probability distribution may change, the type of probability distribution may change. So many a time you come across non-stationary the demand situation. Frequently changing service level requirements. So this is also another problem. Now two specific conditions are to be met for supply chain management. You just note down these 2 points. First one is the performance of supply chains must be continuously evaluated. Is it okay? Because it's this performance is a function of time. There are many factors affecting the performance of the supply chains, and so obviously this performance is to be continually monitored and evaluated. Inventory service level trade-off has to be optimized. This point already I have mentioned. That means you try to maximize the service level with the minimum inventory investment. So this is really a challenging assignment. Now, why the supply chain management has become an important issue or important management practice in present industrial context. So you must have very clear ideas on this. So why almost all the organizations that talk about the importance of, or they are becoming aware of the importance of supply chain management. In today's global marketplace, individual firms no longer compete as independent entities with brand names. They work as a part of an integrated supply chain. Okay, so this is a new paradigm, and so whenever I say create an organization, so I must know that in which in which way I have become a part of a bigger supply chain or integrated supply chain. Success of a firm depends on its managerial ability to integrate and coordinate intricate network of business relationships among supply chain partners. There are many supply chain partners. When we discuss the supply chain network, you will have a very clear idea. And so all these the partners may be in most likely in majority of the cases they are different organizations, and all these partners, many of these partners may work at cross purposes, and so there could be the conflicting interests between these partners. A firm, manufacturing or service belong to at least one supply chain. Okay. Now here in this context I want to highlight the two important points. So please note them down. How widely or narrowly a supply chain is managed. How widely or narrowly. It may be, when you start a company at the initial stage, in the formative stage, you may have say little control or very say you can manage the supply chain very narrowly. Whereas as you expand your activities, as your the product mix becomes wider, then so you may be able to control your supply chain in a much better way, and you may have enough control on several members of your supply chain. How widely or narrowly a supply chain is managed is an indicator of the extent to which SCM is practiced. Okay, so this is to be decided. First, supply chains can be managed as a single entity through a dominant member referred to as predator. Supply chains can be managed as a single entity through a dominant member referred to as a predator. That means you will come to know when you look at the supply chain network, you may maybe you will find that essentially that inbound logistics or the outbound logistics or both, they're essentially controlled by say the main company or say the manufacturing systems. So in that context, the manufacturing systems or the main company becomes a predator. So who is actually the dominant the member in the supply chain? Is he controlling, or is that company or is that particular entity or that particular member controlling almost entire the supply chain performance, or the supply chains are managed through a system of partnerships through well-developed cooperation and coordination. So these are the two extremes or extreme conditions you may come across while you deal with the supply chain management issues. Now, what is a supply chain? Now, SCM literature is replete with many definitions. Most commonly, it is defined. So, you please note down this definition. What is a supply chain? That means it is a supply chain is defined as a system, the constituent parts of which include material suppliers, production facilities, distribution services, and the customers, linked together via feed-forward flow of materials. Okay, that is from the suppliers to say the factory system, and feedback flow of information. So that is very important. In fact, that means the actual status at a particular say point in at a particular point in time related to a particular aspect in the supply chain, you must get through information, say the flow, and this the flow of information must be in the reverse direction. Originally used in the logistics literature in the 1980s to describe a new integrated logistics management approach across different business functions. Later on, this integrated approach was extended outside firm boundaries to the customers and suppliers. So please go through all these aspects. You'll get a clear idea that what was it, say 50 years back, and what it has become now. Today, it directs to several SC processes, not necessarily directed to logistics. Okay, so SCM has passed through several stages of evolution during past 5 decades. First one is extension of organization to include all other members of the distribution channel in the context of marketing. Then the technologies such as industrial dynamics and minimum total cost approach to distribution logistics were advocated later on in respect of supply chain management only. For achieving competitive advantage, focus shifted from consideration of factors within the manufacturing plant to factors related to relationship development with suppliers and customers, and from intra-firm functional integration, that means within the firm there could be many functions. Okay, now we move to inter-firm integration in the supply chain. So this point you just make a note. And the process of integration of supply chain has undergone the following 4 phases. So the phase 1 is each department of a business organization functions independently, that is phase 1. In phase 2, cost reduction without consideration of performance achievement, functional integration within the organization through materials management, manufacturing management and distributions for smooth flow of goods, but not necessarily you concentrate on cost reduction. In phase 3, integration of those aspects that are directly under the control of a company, including outward goods management. This is an important issue. Integrating supply and demand along the company's own chain, recognition of importance of the customers. So this is an important consideration. And in phase 4, extension of integration to external activities. Now this point is to be noted. Company becomes customer oriented by linking customer purchasing activities with company's own procurement. So linking your procurement systems with customers' purchasing systems. Okay, manufacturing and marketing activities. So these 2 functions are also playing the most crucial role. So with this, what we have highlighted the basic issues of that we deal with for supply chain management, and when that means what is the present practices, how do you identify the supply chain management related issues in the present industrial context. So all these details we have come across. We have also defined in explicit terms what is a supply chain. So with this basic knowledge, now definitely we can say deal with several other important issues already affecting positively the supply chain management that we will discuss in the subsequent lecture sessions. Thank you.